Rachel in Bentonville. And Rachel writes, I make $115,000. My company stopped 401k match and is doing an automatic 5% into a cash balance plan, instead pinned to 10-year treasury. Should I invest less in bonds in the accounts I do control? We don't know Rachel's age, and I think that's very important here too, but I do think from a diversification standpoint alone, Johnny, I think this is generally we would say yes, because if you are out of the control of 5%, that 5% match, and it's going into something like a bond or tied to the treasury, you're going to want at least a portion of the funds that you're contributing into more growth-oriented vehicles.
Yeah, you want to approach this from a total picture standpoint, not just on the account, because you can't do anything with that cash balance pension plan to affect what your company has decided to invest in. Now, I'm not going to go down that road and argue about what the company's decided to invest in. It is what it is. But you control your 401k plan. You control any other accounts that you have, like an IRA account or something of that nature. And we believe that you need to think about that as a total picture. And what does that mean? Well, how much money is going into that cash balance pension plan? How much do you have in it? What percentage of your overall portfolio does that make up? And again, depending on your age, as Scott alluded to, you could be very, very heavy in equities on the other side of that and be just fine. As a matter of fact, if you're young and there's a lot of money going into that cash balance pension plan, then you could be kind of dragging behind in terms of the ability to keep up with inflation. But we're not going to worry about what you can't control. What we are going to worry about is what you can control. And what you can control is the investments and the equity mix that you have in the 401k plan. The one thing that I would say, Scott, that is probably not a good idea for them to do is to just do what a lot of people do, and that is default to this target date fund thing, because you're going to have more bonds in the target date fund, so you're going to be overweight in bonds. You want to really think about how much you want to have in equities and probably be more aggressive on the 401k side than you normally would be, because you've got that bond component in the cash balance plan.
Yeah, we've talked about that target date fund before. In fact, I think last week we talked about that. And if you're not familiar with that, actually most people probably are, but if you find those in your 401k, it's going to start with the year. And that year is generally meant to be the year you're intending to retire. So if you pick a year very far into the future, it is going to be more growth-oriented. But as you get closer to that retirement year, it is going to be on a glide path to more conservative. And the way they define more conservative is more bond exposure. So that wouldn't be probably a good route to go either. And then the other component of this, too, is the cash balance part that your employer is putting in there is going to be stable, but it's not going to move very much. And when you're putting your funds in, you probably want that movement. And I'm talking about in both directions. We've talked about the concept of dollar cost averaging before on this show. And the more aggressive or the more volatile an investment is, can actually work in your favor, John, when you are frequently contributing and buying more shares.
It can, and you're not going to get that effect, as you mentioned, over here in the cash balance plan, because it is fairly stable. Bond prices do fluctuate to some degree, but the yield on that cash balance plan is currently around 4%. 4.3% is where the 10-year Treasury rate was right before we came on the air. I checked on that. And so, you're not going to get a lot of growth there. You're also not going to be able to really outpace inflation in that. So that makes the emphasis on your other portfolios, 401k, IRAs, things of that nature. You want to probably even think about contributing to things like a traditional IRA, even though you may not be able to deduct it, or maybe a Roth IRA to get more equity exposure in your portfolio in addition to what you may be doing in your 401k.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make about not outpacing inflation, because we're in this odd time right now in the economy where you actually can. The inflation is about 3%, and as you mentioned, the Treasury yields are 4%, but that is not going to last.
Right.
It never has for very long. It's upside down. The yield curve is inverted, and that's not the way history tells us things are going to go for very long. And I think the other part, too, that we'd point out here for Rachel, we didn't know, she did not tell us, and I think this is a key component to her her planning for retirement is we don't know her contribution rate. How much are you putting back? Because we've said this on the program too before, because she's focused on investments, and that's important. Your rate of return is important, but way less important than the rate of return is what are you putting in?
Yeah. And there's a lot of pieces to this, Scott. There's a lot of components here. And this is why I think it would behoove Rachel to sit down with a financial advisor and take a look at that allocation. Look at all of the factors that are coming into play here, because you can do some things with this with limited knowledge. And it's okay. It's not going to blow up anything, but you might not be getting the maximum impact for your retirement savings if you don't bring along someone that has some expertise in this area and help to guide you.
If you've got questions for the Get Ready for the Future show, you can call or text them to us at 501-381-5228. You can call and leave a voicemail, or you can write it out in text and send it to that number. You can also send us an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. Get a question in. Whatever it is about money, we're here to answer it and give you some good education along the way.